Okay, so today we are going to be talking about factored or intercept form of quadratics. Okay, we are still talking about the quadratic function, and there are three different forms. We've already covered standard form, so we're going to talk about intercept form, and you can also, again, you can call it factored form because if you take a standard form and factor it, this is what you will get. And we saw that when we were actually solving standard form before. So, okay. The really neat part about intercept or factored form is that it is automatically going to help you get your x-intercepts, right? That's what's actually in the parentheses. But you have to solve them for x. And remember that you make y equals 0 to get them. Okay, so P and Q. And notice there's a minus in each of those, and then there's not in the original. Your signs are always going to change, and it's because you're actually having to solve them. Okay, so make sure you're remembering that you have to solve these, which means your sign's going to change. So these two parentheses give you the x-intercepts of your function. Okay, so first example, as far as just to look at, is y equals 2 times x minus 1 times x minus 5, because those are all being multiplied. Okay, so if you solve your x-intercepts, right, we make y equals 0. So x minus 1 equals 0 and x minus 5 equals 0. You have to do it for both. Your two x-intercepts should be 1 and 5. So that's where they should cross the x-axis. Okay, and we're going to get into the steps because, again, very, very easy to pick those out from the parentheses, but we do at least have to get the vertex in order to be able to graph it. So let's see how we do that. Okay, so we already know. Step 1, we are going to solve for the x-intercepts. Okay, very, very easy. So then you are going to determine what the midpoint is between them. Okay, where is your halfway point between those two x-intercepts? Then you are going to substitute the midpoint, which is basically going to end up being the x value of your vertex, okay, into the function to get the y value of the vertex. Remember, we talked about this, about these being symmetric, okay? So if my x-intercepts on here are at 1 and 5, right, 1 and 5, halfway between 1 and 5 has to be 3. And that has to be my axis of symmetry going through my vertex. So I could take 3, that's my x value, halfway between 1 and 5, and I can substitute that in for both x's and then simplify it. So that's going to be 2 times 2 times negative 2, that's negative 8. So my vertex must be 3, negative 8. And there it is. And then you don't actually need any more points in order to make the curve as long as you have your vertex and your x-intercepts. All right, so let's try a couple and make sure we've got it. Again, those are your steps. Make sure you've got them written down, and then we'll practice it. Okay, so step 1. All right, so we have x minus 5 is 0, and x plus 1 is 0. So my two x-intercepts are positive 5, because I have to add 5 to both sides, and negative 1. So I'm going to go ahead and graph those. Negative 1 and positive 5. Okay, so now I need to find the middle. Now, there's a couple of ways. You can count squares, or you can add them together and divide by 2. So 5 plus negative 1 divided by 2. You're basically finding the average between the 2 points. And that should be 2. So that should be the middle of my function is at x is 2. So there's where my axis of symmetry is going to be. So now I'm going to substitute that value back in. So 2 minus 5 and 2 plus 1. Right? I'm going to go ahead and substitute that in and figure out what the y value is going to be, because now y equals this. So that's going to be -3 times +3. So my y value is -9. So my actual vertex is 2, -9. So +2, -9. Again, we're going to graph it just like we did before. Start on the left-hand side and draw a curve through your points. Try not to make it pointed. And then make sure you put the arrows at the ends. And we're good. All right, let's try another one. All right, so -2 times x minus 3 times x plus 1. So same thing. Step 1, let's go ahead and solve for our x-intercepts. All right, so if I have to add 3 here, that means it should be 3. And if I have to subtract 1 here, it should be -1. All right, so -1 and +3. So again, find the halfway point between them or add them together and divide by 2. Find the average. And that should be 1. So the x value of my vertex is 1. Right? And that's halfway between them right here. Substitute that 1 back in. So -2, 1 minus 3, 1 plus 1. That's going to be -2 times -2 times +2. So I'm going to get +8 this time. Okay, so 1 +8 is all the way up here, which means my graph is actually facing down this time. So make sure you're graphing it correctly. So again, we're going to make a nice curve up and then down the hill. And there we go. That's all you're going to be doing with this set is just graphing. Come back on the next one and we'll start describing it.